It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does, and good to be with you on a Tuesday edition of the program. Got a lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Bill Bender drops by in about 10 minutes to talk some college football, particularly Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, who's now at the Chargers. There is baseball to get to, history for the Chicago White Sox, not the kind of history you want to make. The Chiefs, you're known by the company you keep. We'll get into that, some Brandon Aiyuk news, and a whole bunch more. We welcome in Sam Yarnell to start things off today. And Sam, we started off with Jim Harbaugh and the University of Michigan. No, he's not the coach there anymore, but allegations have officially been levied. Basically, the charges have been levied by the NCAA. Jim Harbaugh says he didn't know there was any sort of cheating taking place. Connor Stallions, this whole Netflix documentary that's going to come out, should all be very interesting. But the bottom line is that Jim Harbaugh right now is going down with the ship on this one and saying, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything I wasn't supposed to. We were running a clean program as far as I knew. It was very lawyerese in terms of what he said. I didn't have knowledge. We'll let you hear in his own words. This is Jim Harbaugh yesterday, questioned at what turned out to be the end of a very short press conference, asked about the allegations against that Michigan program that he once ran.
Yeah, I do have a comment on that. Never lie, never cheat, never steal. I was raised with that lesson. I have raised my family on that lesson. I have preached that lesson to the teams that I've coached. No one's perfect. If you stumble, you apologize, and you make it right. Today, I do not apologize. I did not participate, was not aware, nor complicit in those said allegations. So for me, it's back to work and attacking with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Doth to protest too much, Jim Harbaugh? You know what it reminded me of? I hate to say it. It's going to go political for just a second. It reminded me of Bill Clinton. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. It kind of reminded me of that. And it was just it was so contrived. And it comes across as so phony as he does. You know, he wants so badly to be Pete Carroll. He wants so badly to be Pete Carroll. And he never will be. Never will be. Because he's not winning a championship in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Unless he's deciding to go coach somewhere else. Not winning a Super Bowl with the Chargers. So you'll never be Pete Carroll. And by the way, I'll argue that Pete Carroll has attacked everything with energy more than Jim Harbaugh ever has. I'd rather have the Pete Carroll energy. But I look at Harbaugh and I just see phony. I see fake. And of course he knew. This guy touched everything that went on in that program. And you're telling me he didn't know about this scheme that was going on with Connor Stallions? He didn't green light it? He didn't think it was okay? Last thing, and then I'll let you talk. Two things can be true. Jim Harbaugh could be a great football coach. And he is. Look, he won a national championship, the playoff championship, all of that. Great. Took the Niners to a Super Bowl. Was within a questionable pass interference call not made of winning a Super Bowl. Great coach. You could argue that he's both a great coach and a slime ball. And I think he's both. I think he's a great coach, and I think he's a slime ball. What say you?
The Harbaugh answer, first of all, yesterday, it was classic Jim Harbaugh, classic football guy, raised in a football family. And I think that's exactly what it reflects. Jim Harbaugh kind of embodies American football as we see it. And,
America.
You know, to the point that he made there about, you know, I'm sure that Jack and Jackie, when they were raising Jim and his brother up in Ohio and all the surrounding states in the early 70s or late 60s, early 70s. I'm sure that's what they were professing into them. But at the end of the day, you said it. And I said it, right? They're a football family. They are so much part of American football's history in this country. They know what it takes to win. And I think that Harbaugh probably gets a little defensive at this time because he doesn't want to come outright and, disrespect the sport and say, yeah, we were doing it. Everyone was doing it. We were just the ones that got caught because, Ryan Day was really upset that we beat him 3 years in a row. So he hired his dad's brother's attorney firm or something to go dig up a bunch of dirt. It was the wildest thing. At the end of the day, this all draws back to Ryan Day. And as long as this drags out, it's just a worse look for Ohio State because all Ohio State look like in this grand scheme and this whole conundrum are the biggest losers. Because at the end of the day, Michigan won the big game multiple years in a row, whether Connor Stallions was stealing signs or not. Michigan did what it took to win, and in that rivalry, if I know one thing about it, it's that you do what it takes to win. So I don't think that Harbaugh necessarily didn't know about everything that's going on. Like you said, right? It's a football coach, let alone a power conference football coach. They know what's going on throughout the entirety of that program. There's not a load of laundry that's done in that program without the head coach knowing about it. Now, I don't know if he knew the full extent of it. I don't think anyone ever will. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a very strong presence of the feeling that this was a prevalent theme in college football. And there was kind of a spite move that caused one team to get caught. And at the end of the day, it strung itself out over the course of a 10-month investigation now.
I think two things could also be true. That Ryan Day, and there were some sour grapes here with Ohio State because they were getting their asses kicked on a daily basis or on a yearly basis by this version of the Michigan program. And I also think it can be true that there were other programs, even in that conference, that were doing the same thing. The thing is, you got caught. For whatever reason, whether you're the one that got caught. Try telling a police officer when you're speeding, oh my God, but every other car is speeding by me too. Why aren't they getting pulled over? Too bad, you got caught. And for Harbaugh to stand up there and deny it over and over and vociferously so, it's just so phony. It's so he's just so fake. It's just so fake. I just can't stand him. But he is a great football coach. That is undeniable. Bill Bender will follow up on this. We'll talk with him next.
I'd like to say this is the first time, but there have been others.
How many?
Who can keep track?
You think this is a joke?
Darling, we need answers, and you're gonna give them to us.
Tell us again.
My car broke down. I brought it here.
I got stuck paying an expensive repair bill.
So it's true.
How much, darling?
$2,300.
$2,300.
What was I supposed to do? My transmission was shot.
You pick up your phone and you call CarShield before the car breaks down.
Plans through CarShield cover up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car.
That's right. A plan through CarShield could save you on some criminally high auto repairs, especially if your car is out of warranty. So, call CarShield, America's #1 auto protection company, before a breakdown and save yourself from getting stuck in car repair jail.
Let me guess. You hate saving money.
Who hates saving money?
Apparently you do.
All you had to do was call CarShield. And you could have protected yourself against expensive repairs.
Yeah, and then my price will go up the minute I file a claim.
Shut up! CarShield has the price locked in.
For as long as you cover your car.
I guess I should have called CarShield?
It's about time you said something that made sense.
Now you know what you need to do next time.
Bet he'll call CarShield now.
So can I go? Or
CarShield has an A rating with the Better Business Bureau and was voted America's most trusted auto protection company. Don't get handcuffed paying expensive auto repairs. Call now and get the CarShield guarantee. Your price will never go up and your coverage will never go down as long as you cover your car. In just minutes, you could have a plan that covers up to 5,000 parts and systems in your car. Don't wait until it's too late. Get CarShield's best coverage yet. Call 800-722-6574.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
Sports Wrap continues on this Tuesday. Let's continue the conversation on Jim Harbaugh, his comments from yesterday, with our friend, the great Bill Bender. Does a terrific job on all things college football for the Sporting News. Football's in the air when Bill Bender starts showing up on the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime, my friend. All right. You heard what Jim Harbaugh had to say yesterday. You see the allegations, basically the charges filed by the NCAA. What did you make of the way Harbaugh reacted to it? We had our say in the first segment. I want to see what you think.
When he says, I apologize for nothing, I laughed. Whatever your feelings are, he got out on the escape hatch, much like Pete Carroll did years ago. I'm sure Michigan will face some sort of punishment. I don't know if it results in vacated wins or titles. I don't think it will. I do think it will result in some punishment for Sharon Moore, the coaches involved. And Jim Harbaugh, I don't think will ever coach college football again. So isn't that the George Costanza thing where, what is it? If you believe it, it's not a lie. I think that we've reached that phase of this argument.
It's like fleeing to a country with no extradition treaty. I mean, that's what it is, Bill. I mean, all of this, pomp and circumstance and this, this vociferous allegation that's out there from the NCAA, it's all great. It means absolutely nothing. We know what Jim Harbaugh is. If you haven't figured it out by now, the joke's on you. And when he comes out yesterday and he only made me think more of him being guilty of this with the way he came out yesterday. And so in such an animated way, all of a sudden he's looking at a sheet of paper in front of him and reading from it and looking up occasionally to make it look like he's talking off the cuff. This was all planned. It was all preordained. I wouldn't be shocked if the question was planted.
Right. And the very lawyered up language, I never had any knowledge and that way he can't be implicated. I didn't get a law degree, so but I do know what I know, and we know what we see. And I think in the ESPN report that came out Sunday, Pete did a nice job with that. It's still nothing that we didn't see, other than now we know that it's on paper that, yes, that was Connor Stallions on the Central Michigan sideline, which I've thought all along was the most egregious error or misjudgment, violation, whatever you want to call it, of all, because they had a rival school, Michigan State, on the other sideline.
Is there anything that would make this rise? Is there anything else that could come out at this point that would make this rise to the level of something that would vacate wins or championships? Or is this the top? Is this kind of the top of it? Well,
I'm sure there's some other things in there. I mean, I'm curious about the deleted text. You're seeing conflicting reports about exactly what those deleted texts were. I think a lot of this is going to fall on Sharon Moore, and he's trying to get a new era, not a new era, but a comparable era of Michigan football, trying to keep what they've got going over the last 3 years going. And it's going to be made more difficult the more this is in the news. So I do think we won't have a resolution on that until at least the end of the season, maybe more. But then again, remember how quickly the Big Ten acted to suspend Jim Harbaugh last season? Not out of the question.
How much does this make Sharon Moore start at a deficit?
Not more than the schedule they face or the quarterback question they have without J.J. McCarthy. I mean, those are my questions for Michigan in 2024 are, how do they beat Texas with an inexperienced quarterback? How do they get through a Big Ten schedule that features Oregon and USC coming into their house, unfamiliar opponents, and they have to go to Ohio State and Washington. It's not an easy schedule for any first-year coach. I think the only coach in the country that might have a tougher schedule is Florida's Billy Napier. So I think those immediate challenges on the field for Sharon Moore, given that they lost 13 guys to the NFL draft, are probably more than the NCAA stuff, at least in the short term.
I would imagine Sharon Moore has an answer for this. Do you, in terms of what makes this Michigan team viable this season?
The defense. Their defense is going to be really good with Wink Martindale. They still have
Wink.
Wink. And they still have 3 first-round guys on that defense. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, probably some others. Their defense has been nasty. I think they're not going to change their identity much. I mean, they're going to need Donovan Edwards to step up. They're going to run the football. They're going to have what Joel Klatt calls the boa constrictor. None of those things change. But the specter of the NCAA stuff hasn't gone away. I don't know about you. I think this Connor Stalions Netflix special, Connor Netflix, better name, I think it's going to have an unsatisfactory conclusion for all of us. We're going to watch it and be like, why did I just watch that? It didn't tell me anything. It's very one-sided.
What does it do to Harbaugh's legacy ultimately? I mean, is his legacy, look, he was a Michigan guy. He came back. He won a national championship. The end. That from the fan base's perspective, that is certainly the case. But outside of those circles around the football world,
right. Well, I mean, I live in the Columbus bubble, so I know what their legacy for Jim Harbaugh is. It's very different than the real one, which is, to me, very comparable to Pete Carroll, who ironically was his nemesis in the NFL, where he left before they got in trouble. But 2 decades later, I think of USC football, and I still go to, man, those teams were awesome. And I think that's what I'll do with Michigan. I'll say, man, those teams played complimentary, boring football as good as anybody, running and playing great defense. And they did turn the tide on the Ohio State rivalry. But Connor Stalions thing will always be there. But to me, it doesn't take away how they won the national title last year, mainly because Jim Harbaugh was suspended for the most important stretch of the season, and they still won the games on the field.
Will his success or lack thereof, potentially, at this Chargers job in L.A., does that particularly, or can that particularly have an effect on the way we view him? If he's a twice, I don't want to say failed head coach. I mean, he went to a Super Bowl, but a twice a head coach that could not get over the hump.
Right. I mean, now the challenge is to win a Super Bowl. I mean, Pete Carroll did that. Pete Carroll's one of the very few coaches who was able to do both. Guys like Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson. And you know what? Jim Harbaugh, personality, polarization-wise, is very much like those guys. So I'm interested to see if he can turn the AFC West into something more and I think they're going to have fun rivalries with the Raiders. I'm interested to see how they do against the Chiefs. Can he get them? I think he will get more out of Justin Herbert. That's one underrated thing about Jim Harbaugh. Say what you want about him. He does get the most out of quarterbacks. Even the bad ones he had at Michigan, he does a good job with that position.
There is ultimately a harsh reality, though, about the NFL, and you're restricted to what you have. Right. It's not like you can go grab a freshman quarterback or something like. I mean, it's going to be much more difficult, and Herbert not being healthy is also a problem. Bill Bender, College Football, The Sporting News, does a terrific job. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, no problem. Looking forward to doing this again.
We're coming back. We take it to segment 3 on this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up, got some Chiefs to get into. You're known by the company you keep. Maybe the Chiefs should just change their motto to just win, baby. I'll explain. Some baseball to talk about as well. We haven't talked about the Mike Trout injury situation because there's been so much going on over the last 4 or 5 days, but we'll get into that as well. Sam Yarnell, which team will Brandon Aiyuk be going to? Because it doesn't sound like he's staying in Santa Clara with the 49ers. Matt Mayoko had the news first last night that the team is reportedly going to trade Aiyuk to either the Browns or the Patriots. One of those could potentially be a game changer. If he goes to Cleveland, I think it is. And look, that team was forget it. They were good last year. Now, granted, some of that good was with Joe Flacco at quarterback and not Deshaun Watson. And there's certainly a question about what Watson is at this stage of his career, which is kind of crazy to say because he's still in his 20s. But there are certainly some questions about Deshaun Watson and what he is at this stage in his career. You're questioning if he's in his 20s. I could promise you.
No, he's got to be like 29, right? I'm doing the math in my head, 28, 29, because he was drafted in 17.
Hey, Google, how old is Deshaun Watson? Yes. 28.
28, yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Google. I appreciate that. All right, so that could be a potential game changer, I think, in terms of what is going to be, I think, a division where nobody finishes under 500, potentially. Give me some thoughts on what you're thinking right now when you see this news.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things with the Brandon Aiyuk kind of whole status to me. And it's funny that this has developed as quickly as it has, because as recently as Sunday afternoon, I was talking to somebody who's well connected in NFL circles, and they said that it seemed like the entire Aiyuk thing was a smoke show and that the Niners never really wanted to trade him. My biggest curiosity, because we saw the same thing with Debo, right? It's like they kind of did it with all of their star receivers this offseason. My thing is, with regard to Brandon Aiyuk, I want to know what the return is, because I think as much as we talk about the San Francisco 49ers and how prolific that offense is, a huge credit in that goes obviously to the best running back in the world in Christian McCaffrey, and probably the third, I will definitely say top 5 receiver in the world in Deebo Samuel. Not to mention the best left tackle in the world in Trent Williams, and so on and so forth, with an all-pro defense on the other side as well. When we talk about the Niners' success, I don't think that it really hinges a ton upon Brandon Aiyuk. I'm most curious to see how Aiyuk does now in one of these other places as the number 1 option, because in San Francisco, he's the number 3 option. So now he'll automatically become the number 1 option. It led me to have an interesting discussion with myself in my head, Jason, and I'm curious your thoughts.
I would love to be inside that discussion with you inside your head, talking to yourself. Oh, would I kill to be a fly on the wall for that conversation?
So obviously, if Brandon Aiyuk goes to New England, he's the best receiver on the team. No question. We can agree on that. Anyone can. If Brandon Aiyuk goes to Cleveland, is he a better receiver than Amari Cooper?
It's a good question. I think it's competitive. I think it's competitive. Amari Cooper at this stage of his career, I mean, there's got to be some slippage at this point. I would say Aiyuk is.
It's close. I think that for the purposes of even having that argument, the Browns are for Brandon Aiyuk what make more sense if you really care about winning. Obviously, if you care about what your next contract is going to be and how much you can renegotiate in the offseason, go Patriots or go home, because they'll pay you till the cows come home.
Well, the contract is that is all of the details right now, is which team may offer him a better deal, because I don't think he's going to be agreeable to being traded and not just still hold out with wherever he goes, unless he gets the deal he wants. So it has to be predicated on that. Yeah.
In my mind, if he gets that assured wealth from the Patriots, then yeah, sure, go there. But if you have any intention of winning, the New England Patriots are not looking at that for the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I like the move to the Browns. I'm curious what the return is, though. I don't know if they're a playoff team.
I'm going to tell you something. John Lynch, you have screwed this up. Here's where I disagree with you a little, Sam. Even if you want to say he's the third option, second, whatever option you want to say, that team, as much as any team in this league, is as great as the sum of the parts. They cannot afford, again, you've got a good quarterback in Brock Purdy. I'm not ready to say great. I'm not ready to say the greatest or any of that stuff. You know, that team, as we have discussed ad nauseum, going back to the radio show we were doing, to doing this thing on as just a podcast, to being on television. We have talked about ad nauseum the fact that this Niners team, the idea of them winning is based on the collective. You take Brandon Aiyuk out of that. I don't know what they would get in a said deal if there's any parts coming over that aren't draft picks that might be able to contribute right away. If you're not bringing over something substantial, you have lessened that collective. John Lynch, you have to. I don't care if you use Gorilla Glue, duct tape. You have to do everything you can in the moment when you have a chance to win a championship. You have a championship caliber team. We know this. You have to do everything you can to keep that together. And the fact that they've just thrown their hands up and thrown in the towel as it relates to Brandon Aiyuk, that is baffling to me. As an organization, these windows don't stay open forever. Remember, the 49ers sucked for a long time. The 49ers have gone through their droughts. Okay? The idea that they're just throwing in the towel on an asset that is key to their success, because everybody on that team is key to their success. Everybody. There is not a piece of that puzzle that you can take away and you go, oh yeah, they're going to be fine. Because they need all of them. Because it's what makes this team tick, is the collective. So to me, John Lynch is as much to blame in all of this as Brandon Aiyuk or anything else that happens here. I will be curious to see what the return is. And I'm also curious to see if this is, in some regard, the Niners just trying to drive up the price. That there could be something to be said for that they're floating this information out there with the idea that they're just trying to get more. Real quick.
There's an interesting discussion to be had, and we'll have it on another day. I think that the Niners are very quickly becoming the Miami Dolphins and handcuffing themselves to a subpar quarterback.
We're back with talk on Mike Trout next. Something to consider coming up in about 10 minutes. Put the Chiefs under the spotlight. We didn't get to talk about this late last week with everything that was going on in the Olympics. And, we get an hour every day. We got to change that, I think. Sam Yarnell. Mike Trout done for the season. Stop me if you've heard this one. Mike Trout re-tears the same meniscus, different part of the meniscus, but the same meniscus that he had just recovered from. Played a couple innings of a rehab game, and that was it. And, I mean, I've sat and kind of marinated in this. Thank you, Anita Marks. I've marinated in this idea of Mike Trout's career and how we look at it. Because let's be honest, at this point, the writing's on the wall. The guy just can't stay healthy. And it's such a shame to have to say anything negative about somebody who has been so positive for the game of baseball. You know, there are so many guys you could pick and kind of needle at and dissect and find something wrong. The only thing you could say about Mike Trout is he just can't stay healthy. And there have been guys throughout the history of sports, whether it was Grant Hill, Terrell Davis, who was around for a short time, a comet that kind of came across the screen, and watching this slow disintegration of Mike Trout in his 30s, getting paid all this money, which is another matter entirely, the albatross around the neck of the Angels, that contract has been for one of the worst owners in all of sports, and Artie Moreno and company. It's just a shame to sort of see what the Mike Trout story has turned into. And that, you know, the idea of would he ever get a chance to win a World Series? Would he ever get a chance to play in meaningful games in October because he's played in so few? It's just such a shame to sort of watch the way. And I'd like to come up with something fancy and something witty and something super insightful to say, but all I've got is sad. It's just sad watching his career sort of devolve into this litany of injuries.
It is. I want to take this chance to ream the Los Angeles Angels as an organization for single-handedly ruining probably the greatest baseball player of all time. As much as we talk about Mike Trout's health being an issue throughout the span of his career, and it has, this is a guy who we're very quick to forget played 155 plus games in a season 4 years in a row early in his career, and he played at an MVP level for all 4 of them. What did the Angels do during that 4-year stretch? They played in 1 playoff series. 1.
I like the pause for effect there and then saying 1. It was good. It was good. That was Jim Harbaugh-esque. That was you got an Academy Award coming, according to Paul Feinbaum. Sorry.
The interesting one to me was the last year he played 159 games. The last year in that stretch, 2016. You want to know who the second best hitter was on the Angels that year? It was 36-year-old Albert Pujols, who hit just under 270 and went yard 30 times.
He might have been 36. He might have been 46 at that point. Who knows?
The team did not win 80 games. This is an abomination to the sport of baseball by the organization that is the Los Angeles Angels to not build a competitive team around Mike Trout. As much as we can sit here and talk about this guy getting injured and not playing enough games, whenever he got injured, he had no reason to come back. The team was never competitive. I would be as, I might be as foolish as to believe that 50% of his injuries he could have come back from during that season and still played if he had any reason to, but he didn't. And then this year, when he gets injured early enough in the season that, hey, there might still be some reason for him to come back, and the wheels are falling off his career because he's 32 years old, and we all know the end is near, and he tries to rush back for the first time ever and gets re-injured. So just horrible mismanagement on the part of the Los Angeles Angels throughout the entirety of Mike Trout's career, which, check me, I believe began in 2011. Yeah, 2011. So 14 seasons of mismanagement of this guy's career, having one of the best, if not the best, player in Major League Baseball at that time, and not being able to play in multiple playoff series. It's horrible. Move the Angels, force them to sell. You're right, Jason. They're as bad as the Oakland Athletics and the John Fisher family and Jerry Reinsdorf and the Chicago White Sox. Those 3 franchises need to be forced into selling.
Mike Trout has played roughly 320 games over the last 5 seasons. Let that sink in. With all the money that he is making right now, he has played roughly 320 games over the last 5 seasons.
Well, that includes the 60-game COVID season. Yes. He played 53 of those 60 games, so credit to him there.
Yeah, if baseball had a 60-game season, he'd have a shot. He'd have a shot of having a hell of a career, man, if they just turn it into the WNBA. Make it like 40 games. Might play 35 of them. And he got off to a good start. Was hitting for power. Was doing some nice things before he got hurt. Had 10 home runs. At one point, he was leading the league in home runs early on in the season. All right, we're coming back. Something to consider right around the corner. The Chiefs. You know them by the company you keep. It's next. All right, Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. Unfortunately, for White Sox fans, not the end in some regard for them. And what could bring about the end of the streaming wars? We didn't have a chance to talk about this late last week, but we're catching up. We'll get to it coming up. Sam Yarnell, something to consider. The ugly truth about the Chiefs. You know, and I mentioned it briefly earlier in the show that maybe they should change their motto to just win, baby. Because this organization, that's all they care about. And look, to some people, that's great. To your fan base, They don't care. I could still go to San Francisco and find Giants fans that think Barry Bonds didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. That he just naturally looked like Popeye by the time his career was done and his head was massive. I could still find people in San Francisco that will think that of Bonds. I could still find women that think Liberace was straight. They might be in their 80s or 90s, but they think Liberace was straight. The fact of the matter is, forget, even just for a moment, forget Harrison Butker, who we'll get to for a second. Forget, guys getting arrested this offseason, the offseason of ill repute for the Kansas City Chiefs. The final straw for me, and what brought me to a point to do a something to consider about the Chiefs and the ugly truth about the organization, was looking out at a practice field yesterday and seeing Chucky out there. John Gruden out on the field with Andy Reid wearing Chiefs garb at Chiefs practice at training camp. I mean, think about for a second that. We always talked about the Raiders for years with Al Davis. It was just win, baby. The Chiefs just don't care. There is no moral conscience there. There is no moral high ground they will ever be able to stake. I'm not going to sit here and run through the litany of things that John Gruden said in emails and behind the scenes. Comments that were certainly offensive to the LGBTQ plus community, comments that would be offensive to women, comments that would be offensive to any human being other than Donald Trump. And there he is. I know they served as assistants together in Green Bay with the Packers. I don't need your history lesson. I don't care. You put him on the field, you own everything that comes with him. The same way that Deion Sanders bringing in Ryan Garcia into his offices in Boulder to sit there and celebrate a guy who is totally wackadoo. You now own that, Deion Sanders. The same way, if a politician gets into bed with white supremacists, you own that. Andy Reid, you own everything that comes with John Gruden when you put him on the field and huddle with him, with players and coaches. You own John Gruden. But the fact of the matter is, maybe they want to own John Gruden. The same way they're okay with owning the comments of a Harrison Butker, even if they put out some tacit statement. Some tiny statement saying, his views don't reflect those of the organization. No, they do. Just as having John Gruden on the field at your practice on Monday means you take ownership of everything that comes with John Gruden.
I'm waiting for the notification that Urban Meyer has been brought on to the Chiefs coaching staff, because that does feel like the next step. The Chiefs are a mess off the field. What's new? This is one of for as much as they win and as much as that organization is full, literally top to bottom ridden with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid merchants, they still figure out how to win. So yeah, great. The Rashee Rice situation is not going to get figured out until very late in the season. If it gets figured out at all, this is going to very much turn into the Kareem Hunt thing, where it gets pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, and he continues to play. I'm sorry, not Kareem Hunt, the Saints running back, whose name is eluding me now. Alvin Kamara. Thank you, Sam.
I was having fun just watching you die on screen. That's okay.
You were saying earlier you want to be inside my head for those conversations. There you go. Sneak peek. It's going to be very much like the Alvin Kamara thing, right? He's going to play this whole season. We'll get the result week 14 of the legal battle. He'll appeal it. It'll turn into an 8-week suspension in 2025. Great. By then, Rashee Rice, at the rate that the Chiefs turn over receivers, will probably not even be relevant in football anymore. You mentioned Harrison Butker, Jason. Congratulations to Harrison Butker on signing a contract extension yesterday. His wife will never have to work a day in her life now. I'm sure he's very happy about that. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs are just a mess. Like as much as they have talent on the field, they continue to mess up off the field. Like you said, their fan base is simply not going to care about that as long as the result at the end of every week is good. But at the end of the day, we as football fans and lovers of the game will look back on this dynastic run they had as, hey, they were basically the early 2000s Miami Hurricanes or Florida Gators. Like, that is what this team is equating itself to. And that's fine, but it just is what it is, and we're all going to have to accept that. And Chiefs fans, in 10 years, when people are talking bad about this dynastic run because of all the off-the-field fallout, you're not going to be able to come back from it because it's just what it is.
If the Cowboys years ago were America's team, can we call the Chiefs MAGA's team? Just saying. We're coming back with more sports wrap. Odds and ends are right around the corner. What do you do when your team's lost 21 games in a row? Are they still your team at that point? We'll get to it next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Before we do, this reminder. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, what are you waiting for? It's available from all your favorite podcasting platforms. Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast available on Spotify, where you can watch us, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. There's a whole bunch of other places that carry it. I just can't remember them all. All right, without any further delay, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell, not the end, unfortunately, for White Sox fans. If you had been hoping for an end to their 20-game losing streak, it is now a 21-game losing streak. They lose last night in Oakland against the A's in front of about 4,700 fans at the Coliseum. I can't believe there were that many fans. Could you imagine paying good American money to go watch the A's and the White Sox? You gotta really be a fan. You gotta be really desperate to put out good American money. I mean, see, this is when I go, the economy, really? It's bad? Because if you have any disposable income, are you really spending it on the A's and the White Sox, Sam Yarnell?
On a team in the Athletics that this offseason cut their payroll by 50% and then raised ticket prices by 30%. Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
My gosh, appointment viewing for the two worst teams in baseball. I shouldn't say that. The Athletics are not the second worst team in baseball.
No.
The Athletics are not the second worst team in baseball. I can't disrespect them like that.
They actually have some talent. They actually have some talent on that roster.
Yep, they've been very good this season. Horrible for the White Sox, man. I mean, it's starting to become a big liability for the books, you'd have to imagine, since they started hanging these next win numbers. The closer and closer they get to August 15th, which is the cutoff date, the more and more money the books lose. So, I don't know. I think the
Did you see their win total? Did you see the White Sox win total right now?
What is it, like 50?
No, 50? Are you crazy? Oh my God. This is as off as you've ever been on anything. 38.5.
Oh my God.
They've set the total at 38.5.
So that's a bet to see if they'll be the worst team in Major League Baseball
Juice
history.
to the over.
Yeah, that's
minus
a bet to see if they'll be the worst.
Minus 138 to the over. Plus 100 to go under 38.5 wins.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. I mean, I kind of referenced it earlier when we were talking about Mike Trout and the Angels. There are 3 select owners in Major League Baseball who, in my opinion, should be immediately forced to sell. John Fisher is unquestionably the top candidate. I mean, you kind of just heard what I said about him. Cut the payroll by 50% this past offseason and increased season ticket prices by 30%. And the other major league owners were just going to be okay with that. And the sport was just going to be okay with that. Not to mention, he's going to move the city or the team between 4 cities in a span of 3 years. John Fisher's got to go. We talked about the Angels. Jerry Reinsdorf. And this is not just a Major League Baseball problem. The National Basketball Association actually needs to step in as well and force him to sell the Bulls, which they never will because he owned them when they were good. Jerry Reinsdorf, and I think people in Chicago...
And broke them up, by the way. Also broke them up when they were good, too.
You're exactly right. And let Michael Jordan leave basketball in the prime of his career. Neither here nor there, and the conspiracy theorists will tell us all they want about David Stern and his agenda. My point being, Jerry Reinsdorf, with regard to the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Bulls for that matter, the Chicago media people, I think, have finally caught on. He has a very explicit plan, and that is to build these teams to be 500 teams, because he knows, Jerry Reinsdorf does, that when you're a 500 team and you can barely make the playoffs or at least stay in the playoff hunt until the end of the season, you'll sell tickets through the end of the year. But when you're not competitive, you don't sell tickets and the team doesn't make money. I don't know what Jerry Reinsdorf is doing with the Chicago White Sox, but I do know that Rob Manfred needs to step in, and so does Adam Silver, and force him to sell both of his franchises.
This guy
can't go on much longer.
This guy with a White Sox hat holding up a sign. It says, "Come on, guys, just win one, please." You are speaking for all White Sox fans, my man. You are speaking for all White Sox fans. 5-1 A's beat the White Sox. Last but not least, this kind of escaped in the midst of everything going on. It's a little inside the beltway stuff. Unless you like to pay for your sports. Venue Sports, the Warner Media / TNT, ESPN, Fox Sports conglomerate that has gotten together and is going to be putting all their sports onto this straight-to-consumer sort of thing, announced their pricing last week. $42.99 per month if you want access to all 3 of those. Now, some people have done the math on this and say, well, if you get that, instead of YouTube TV... and you do this, and Mars lines up with Earth, it's like if you held your cell phone in the air to get reception. You might be able to get reception. This is nuts. $42.99. And here's the kicker. If you sign up now, Venue Sports says, in the course of the first year, your price won't go up. You know what that means? They're planning to raise the price sometime in the first year, Sam.
I don't know if it was you who was telling me this or someone else in the media space, but the grand total, if you want to watch every NFL game this season,
like $2,000,
is a little over $3,000. That's ridiculous. We need to make football for everyone. Let's make sports accessible to people.
Yeah. We got to go. We'll see you tomorrow.